Hello everyone, just before we start this enormous video, I thought I'd do a similar thing to what I did last time. Last time I gave myself 15 seconds to convince you all to subscribe to the channel. And looking at the analytics from the channel, it says 70% of you lovely viewers aren't actually subscribed to the channel. So I thought I would give myself today 10 seconds, ooh, big twist, 10 seconds to convince you all to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to read out all the different types of content that I make within the next 10 seconds, and then hopefully that will be enough to convince you. So here we go in 3, 2, 1, go. We do weekly classic reviews on the channel, as well as the latest news for Series 13, audio drama projects, cast interviews, drunk reactions, list rankings, poop edits, discussions, and more. If I do another one of these videos, I'm going to have to do like 5 seconds. But yeah, that's that. Please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. We're trying to make more content like this, trying to really stretch the boat out, so all the new support and all that sort of thing is really greatly appreciated. So yeah, but without any further ado, let's get into this video. Hello everyone and welcome. I am Ace Creeper and today I'm back with a brand new video. Today is exciting day. Last time we did the complete history of the Doctor and I said if my complete history of the Doctor got 10,000 views, I would make one for the Master. It's certainly surpassed that. It's now at about 22,000 at the time of recording this, which is insane. So thank you all so much for the support on that. So I thought, well, I better go all out and make a complete history of the Master video. So here we are. Same sort of rules as last time. The main source for the video is the TV show. Extra stuff to fill in the gaps will be taken from Big Finish, comics, books, etc., where it doesn't contradict the main canon from the TV show. Believe it or not, the Master's timeline is actually a little bit more convoluted and a little bit more crazy than the Doctor's, so that's just great, isn't it? There's little bits and bats here and there where it isn't clear where certain Masters come, so I do take a little bit of creative liberty to actually sort of push forward my own theories on how these sort of things happen, just to make this whole timeline kind of work in a way. Anyway, let's begin. The first incarnation of the Master is portrayed by William Hughes. The Master, like most young Time Lords, was taken from his family at the age of 8 for initiation, looking into the time vortex itself through the untempered schism. The Master went mad, he went insane. A rhythm of 4 drum beats being implanted in his subconscious, an effect which would worsen with time, getting significantly worse upon his resurrection for the Time War. But we'll get to that. When the Doctor, the Master's best friend, fled Gallifrey in his first post-Division incarnation, the Master was desperate to find out where he went. The Master also fled Gallifrey and eventually regenerated. Before we continue, I know a lot of people in the comments will bring it up. So, James Dreyfus. He played the Master in some Big Finish stories. However, due to controversy on Twitter regarding various questionable opinions, not only have a lot of fans, including myself, discredited him as the Master, but Big Finish no longer seem to be including him as the Master either in their upcoming stories, notably Masterful, which contains every incarnation of the Master that they have the rights to, so it's a little bit weirdly obvious there. So I'm bringing it up here because I know some people in the comments will if I don't mention him at all, but I'm just explaining that I don't want to say anything more. Especially with him being Big Finish, it's not too hard to trim out, so if you want to look into it, look into it. If you don't, there we go, stay out of it. Anyway, the second Master, non-applicable. We don't actually know who played this, obviously, because there hasn't been a definitive second Master incarnation in either Big Finish, comics, anything like that. But we do know that the Master regenerated for the first time and found himself in the Great Fire of London. He joined a club called the Scoundrels Club, where he could recover from his regeneration. This would be a tradition that he held out through most of his regenerations. I'm not going to mention it every time the Master regenerates because it will get a bit tedious, but every single incarnation we talk about today, definitively numbered, does actually visit the Scoundrels Club if they have access to a TARDIS or that sort of thing. They visit the Scoundrels Club after their regeneration to sort of recover, if you will. And this Master eventually at some point regenerated. And here is where things already get a little bit complicated. The 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th Master, Roger Delgado? Out of the 10 incarnations following the second Master, one of which is played by Roger Delgado. We can presume this is the 12th Master incarnation just to make things a little bit easier. This incarnation of the Master was played by Roger Delgado. He had various adventures, eventually encountering the Doctor for the first time since Gallifrey on Earth during an Auton invasion. The Doctor takes his dematerialization circuit away temporarily before the Master gets it back. The Master comes across the Autons, the Sea Devils, the Daemons, the 3rd and 12th Doctor. This incarnation of the Master would eventually regenerate into his next incarnation after a brief encounter with the 12th Doctor. The 13th incarnation of the Master is played by various actors, as you can see on screen: Peter Pratt, Geoffrey Beevers, Anthony Ainley, Gordon Tipple and Eric Roberts. All of this is the same incarnation, but the same incarnation goes through various different bodies via different methods. Not regeneration, so it's still the same incarnation with the same personality, it's just different bodies. So we're going to talk about that now. We're going to split the 13th incarnation of the Master into several different segments, starting with the decayed bodies. The 13th incarnation lived through a full life as the Master in a normal humanoid body before dying. He obviously wasn't able to regenerate, presumably he tried to as hard as he possibly could, but his body slowly ended up decaying, leaving his body and mind alive, but having the physical appearance of, well, a corpse. This degenerated version of 13 would be played by Peter Pratt and Geoffrey Beevers. This incarnation would meet the Doctor various times, notably on Gallifrey, before encountering him again on Traken, where after being thwarted by the Doctor, he would steal the body of Tramus, Nissa's father. Tramus 13. This covers the two incarnations played by Anthony Ainley and Gordon Tipple between that and when he becomes this sort of entity. So this is the stolen body versions of 13. The stolen body still acts like his 13 incarnation, this version of course being played by Anthony Ainley, despite looking totally and completely different to how he once did. This incarnation of the Master meets every single Doctor from his first post-division incarnation to his 7th post-division incarnation. The Master eventually ended up getting infected with the cheetah virus, as seen in the story Survival. A virus that affected lots of different humans who got transported to that planet. You want to watch the story if you want to understand the full ins and outs. It was theorised that because he'd stolen the body of Tramus, a person from the planet Traken and not a Time Lord body, the Master was affected somewhat more by the cheetah virus, but was able to live on a little bit longer than he would have naturally. At one point down the line, the Master transfers into a brand new body. It's not made clear how. We just know that the following events didn't happen to the Anthony Ainley body, it happened to the Gordon Tipple body. So at some point there's a transformation, we don't know how it happens, we don't know when it happens, but it happens and it's the Master, so we just have to kind of accept that by now. We don't know whether it's body swap, extra regeneration or some other form of resurrection, but the new face of the 13th incarnation is portrayed very briefly by Gordon Tipple. This incarnation of the Master eventually tries to mess with the Emperor Dalek, he's caught out and imprisoned, being executed and left floating as an entity kept for safekeeping in the Doctor's TARDIS. And finally, the Stolen Body 13. Not the previous stolen body, but another stolen body. It's quite complicated that this is all the same incarnation, but it is. So let's get on with it. The Doctor kept the Master's entity in the TARDIS with the intention of taking him back to Gallifrey. However, on their way to Gallifrey, the Master breaks free from his prison, floating into the TARDIS and forcing an emergency landing in 1999 San Francisco. The Doctor is shot, meaning the Master is able to escape into the city. He then finds the body of Bruce, a paramedic who, like Tramus, was killed to make way for the Master's consciousness. This is the final face of the 13th incarnation and of the first regeneration cycle of the Master. And he was played by Eric Roberts. The Master, knowing he was on his last legs, decided to try and lay a trap for the Doctor to steal his remaining regenerations, so of course that the Master could live longer beyond his 13th incarnation. Alas, this did fail and the Master was sucked into the Eye of Harmony, where his body and physical form died, leaving only a small entity remaining active somewhere in the time vortex. The Master was dead, merely a whisper in the infinite hall of time itself. However, soon after this, the Time War started, and the Time Lords decided to start using their powers of resurrection to bring back dead Time Lords who could help them win against the Daleks. Two notable resurrections that we know of are of course the Master and Rassilon. So this is the second regeneration cycle of the Master. We're going to call these the Resurrected Masters. So just to split things up, the first Resurrected Master was played by Alex McQueen. He was the first incarnation of the Master's second regeneration cycle. A Master that was resurrected to fight in the Time War. Alas, he had his own ideas. He took a TARDIS and set out to cause mischief with different versions of the Doctor, notably the 6th and 8th Doctors. At some point, for an unknown reason currently, this Master regenerated. The second resurrected Master, the Child. This is almost a missing page in the history of the Master. This incarnation was a child, showcasing the drastic example of body age differentiation during regeneration. Try saying that when you're drunk. The second incarnation has currently not been portrayed by any actor, but we know he served in the Time War alongside the War Doctor, but that's about all we know. The Master tried to deactivate a temporal bomb but was too late and regenerated into his next Incarnation. The third resurrected incarnation of the Master was played by Derek Jacobi. This incarnation was usually referred to as the War Master. He again meddled with some events in history, not really fighting, more of a sort of renegade, having some encounters with the 8th Doctor, and at some point having his own companion, Cole Jarnish, for a small amount of time. Cole had survivor's guilt after surviving an incident where all of his crew were killed and he was the sole survivor. The Master saved Cole from a Dalek attack where he was supposed to die, taking him on various trips, eventually resulting in the Master tracking down the Heavenly Paradigm, a device that could bring an end to the Time War by changing the lineage of history itself. He strapped Cole to the machine, using his temporal energy from saving Cole's life to power the machine, violently murdering Cole and attempting to use the machine to alter the timeline to end the Time War. However, the instruction of just making the universe better was too vague, way too vague, and it allowed the Time War to worsen in the Daleks' favour. He saw the Dalek Emperor take control of the Gallifreyan cruciform, which frightened the Master so much that he ran, dumped his TARDIS and used the chameleon arc to turn himself into a human child, lying there with a fob watch on the coast of the Silver Devastation, ending up eventually becoming a professor on Malcasero, assisting the last of the humans to try and escape and survive despite it being towards the end of the universe. The Master encountered the 10th Doctor, Martha and Jack Harkness, which eventually tripped the Master into falling towards opening the watch, unveiling the Chameleon Arch, returning as the Master before executing his grand plan. He left the Doctor trapped in the year 100 trillion as he stole the TARDIS, but before he could, he was shot by Chan Tho. He regenerated in the Doctor's TARDIS into his next incarnation. The Master, freshly regenerated into his 4th resurrected incarnation, is played by John Sim. The Master uses the Doctor's TARDIS to escape and deliver his plan in the modern day. The Doctor used the Sonic to lock the Master's coordinates on the TARDIS so he couldn't travel back any earlier than 2007. He arrived on Earth in early 2007, right after the fall of Harriet Jones at Christmas 2006. He worked his way up to becoming Prime Minister, taking the name of Harold Saxon and manipulating the human race via mild hypnotism to vote him into power. The Master becomes Prime Minister and activates his plan shortly after. The remainders of the human race from the year 100 trillion were all turned into cyborg drones called Toglifing. These would be used to wipe out most of the human race, turning the planet into a warship with missiles and ships everywhere to conquer the universe with the new Time Lord Empire. This was, of course, thwarted by Martha Jones, spreading her knowledge of the Doctor throughout the whole world over the span of a year and using the countdown of the rocket along with the Archangel Network to help bring the Doctor back, who helped destroy the Paradox Machine, a version of the TARDIS used to prevent the paradox after the human race started wiping themselves out. The Doctor swore to keep the Master, travelling with him and keeping an eye on him. However, Lucy Saxon had different ideas. She shot the Master, who then refused to regenerate, knowing that his Plan B team would be able to resurrect him at a later date. The Master died and was later resurrected in Broadfell Prison. Lucy Saxon again tampered with the resurrection, giving the Master a body that was wasting away, meaning he must eat all the time to sustain energy and life force. Meanwhile, the Time Lords, who were right at the end of the Time War at this point, were activating their plan to return for the final sanction, using a warp star to contact the Master in the modern day Earth to get him to help bring them back. This of course didn't go amazingly well when the Doctor intervened, saving the Master's life and sending the Time Lords back to the Time War. However, the Master had other ideas, wanting revenge for the torment of the Beat of Four, pounding away, getting more fierce with every incarnation. He used his life force to fire energy into Rassilon, killing him in the process, but causing Rassilon to regenerate. Back on Gallifrey, the Master was fixed up through the power of the Time Lords, giving him a body and allowing him to continue in his regeneration cycle. The Beat of Four was also removed from his subconscious, so he was sort of free for the first time in a long time. The Master shortly after stole a TARDIS and was either kicked out or ran away from Gallifrey to go and cause more mischief. He eventually ended up on a Mondasian colony ship where his TARDIS got stuck. His dematerialization circuit on his TARDIS actually broke. He went through the city, killing as many people as he could, living like a king on this one floor of the colony ship, all before a rebellion ripped him down from his throne, forcing him to hide out in disguise and hatch another plan. This plan was to jumpstart the genesis of the Cybermen, influencing events so the people of the colony ship would end up just wiping themselves out. The Doctor eventually arrives on the same ship. Bill gets shot, getting taken down to meet the Master, now known as Razor, he spent 10 years with Bill before taking her to be turned into the first ever Cyberman. He teamed up with Missy, a future incarnation, before getting her spare materialization circuit off her and attempting to escape. Obviously, this all goes wrong when Missy rebels, wanting to stand with the Doctor. She stabbed him and caused him to regenerate. In quick revenge, he shot her with his laser screwdriver, but we'll get to that. He started to regenerate in his TARDIS, flying away from the colony ship. And here is where things get incredibly complicated. The Master regenerated, as he always does, but here's where things get a little bit lost. We have two more incarnations to talk about, Michelle Gomez and Sacha Dhawan. It's never been explained who came first, and which incarnations these actually are. So, unfortunately for you guys, I'm going to have to take a little bit of creative liberty and sort of push forward a theory that works for me and sort of explain how that could work. Obviously, it's never been explained, and until it does, you can all use your own creative freedom, but for the sake of this video and to make it a little bit easier and simpler to understand, I'm going to go in the sort of direction that I think works best for me. It's important to note that Missy and the Dhawan Master could both be the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, or even 13th resurrected incarnations of the Master. So I had a look at the Doctor Falls, I watched it again, I listened to all the dialogue, and I backed a few things up. There was a lot of mention of Missy being the next incarnation along from John Sim. It was never made 100% clear, Missy never gave a definitive answer, saying that she was sort of confused by the whole regeneration, a little bit hazy on that subject. However, I have an explanation for that in just a bit. I'm going to take the assumption that Missy is the 5th resurrected Master, coming right after John Sim, and Sacha Dhawan is an incarnation right after Missy, the 6th resurrected Master. Now, this might not be 100% right, and I'm not going to argue about it in the comments. This is just my personal theory, and I'm going to try and explain as best as possible how this works. If Series 13 and beyond corrects this and gives us more information, then that's great. But at the moment, we don't have enough information to go off, so here's my plan. The 5th resurrected incarnation of the Master is presumably played by Michelle Gomez, although we don't 100% know. After escaping the colony ship and regenerating into a woman, the Master's mind is a little bit muddled. All events of meeting themselves on the colony ship are wiped from their memory as the time streams had been crossed. This could explain why Missy doesn't know or remember if she's the next incarnation along from John Sim's Master or not. She's got her mind all muddled, she doesn't even remember the regeneration process. The Master now goes by the name Mistress, or in short, Missy. Soon after regenerating, Missy headed towards the Scoundrels Club yet again. She took her place and her correct seat as the Master, but obviously because the people of the Scoundrels Club didn't quite understand the concept of regeneration, they decided to try and kick her out. Missy responded by murdering everyone, therefore the end of the Scoundrels Club. She has various adventures, including notably an attempted Cyberman invasion on Earth, even encountering the Doctor again for an adventure on Skaro. Some particular Gallifreyans had a rumour at this point that she did return to Gallifrey after the Skaro interaction, all with the purpose of telling her best mate Rassilon that the Doctor actually knew who the hybrid was. Eventually though, she was trialled for execution, where the 12th Doctor would have to kill her and guard her body in a quantum fold chamber for 1,000 years. However, he decided not to kill her, instead choosing to keep Missy in the chamber for 1,000 years, but alive, not dead, to try and turn her good. This actually worked to some extent. Missy was still dark and very capable of murder, but she did in the end decide to stand with the Doctor. The colony ship incident occurred and she was shot by her previous incarnation, all before being blown up like every other Cyberman and person on that floor by the 12th Doctor. And despite being shot by the laser screwdriver and despite what the Master said of don't even try to regenerate, this is where obviously we have to take a bit of creative liberty and just assume that Missy just still regenerated. She was told specifically, don't even bother to try, but maybe she did try, and maybe it worked. It's not the first time the Master's been wrong, so we assume she regenerates, and Sacha Dhawan plays the next incarnation, or at least I think he does. This would be the 6th resurrected incarnation. After his regeneration, he wakes up on the burning, cold floor of 0507 of the colony ship. He'd been abandoned with no TARDIS, no Doctor, and no way out. At some point he managed to escape the colony ship, presumably in some sort of craft. Perhaps he even used some of the advanced cyber technology and maybe a spare dematerialization circuit to build himself a makeshift TARDIS. Hence the house TARDIS not being bigger on the inside and looking as if it had been converted from some old farmhouse in Spyfall. He eventually got back to Gallifrey, somehow, hidden away in its pocket universe after the events of the hybrid, and Rassilon being overthrown. The Master then explored the Matrix, only there for a bit of fun after the very traumatizing experience of the colony ship and being abandoned by his best friend. However, he stumbles upon some information regarding the Timeless Child. The Doctor, who he would already been a little bit annoyed at for totally abandoning him, was this immortal and special being. Part of what made the Master who he was, Regeneration, was because of the Doctor. This cracked him. It pushed him again to the edge and towards insanity. 1,000 years he spent trying to be good, so he and the Doctor could be on equal ground, best friends again, and it turns out they could never, ever be equals. The Doctor always will be and always has been special, and always been better than him. He decides to take this out on Gallifrey for hiding this secret, destroying it, using the weapons of mass destruction, presumably from the Omega arsenal, maybe even the moment itself. He destroys Gallifrey, before returning to Earth to find the Doctor. He finds out about a new MI6 agent called O, who was brand new to the job, and on his first day of work, so no one really knew what he looked like yet. The Master decides to use tissue compression to shrink him and take his place as the MI6 worker, O. He comes across and meets the Doctor once, but the incarnation he meets, he knows is too early in the time stream, before the colony ship, before the hybrid, before any of this happened. He can't tell the Doctor about the Timeless Child stuff yet, he can't execute his plan yet, so he decided to wait until he found an incarnation of the Doctor in the future. He retired to a distant outback location in his TARDIS, which is of course a makeshift model of an old house, maybe from the colony ship. The Master has an adventure with the Doctor, as you all know, and he's trapped in the Kasavin dimension. At some point he escapes and returns to Gallifrey in the far future. At this point he probably steals a new TARDIS, with the old one being dumped in the modern day somewhere. He meets the Doctor again, trapping her in the Matrix to find out the truth about the Timeless Child. Meanwhile, the Master takes the Cyberium, using it to turn the remains of the Time Lord bodies and turning them into invincible Cybermen, which he could control. However, the plan goes sour when Ko-Sharmus activates the Death Particle, killing every living thing in close range of the Gallifreyan Citadel. However, the Master narrowly escapes, encouraging a few of the Cybermasters to escape onto a TARDIS, and that's all we know so far. There are several different incarnations of the Master which we're going to talk about now who haven't really slot into any places. At the end of the Doctor video we talked about the Curator and the Curse of Fatal Death and the Peter Cushing and all that sort of stuff, so now we're going to talk about the other versions of the Master. Starting with Milo Parker. Milo Parker is a young actor who is playing an incarnation of the Master in the upcoming Big Finish story, Masterful. It's unclear which incarnation he plays. He could be playing the child incarnation from the comics or the very first incarnation of the Master, hence why he's wearing the old Time Lord robes. However, he is playing a version of the Master. I couldn't slot him into a certain place because we actually don't know yet, and we'll probably find out next year. Mark Gatiss actually plays an incarnation of the Master from the Unbound universe, an alternate sort of reality. He does encounter other Masters several times from our universe, so I don't know, who knows, maybe he does play a real incarnation in our universe prior to that of Roger Delgado. It's totally up in the air and very, very unlikely obviously, but there's a few incarnations unaccounted for and I wouldn't run it past Big Finish to just sort of throw that in there for a laugh, I guess. The War Chief. Now this is a bit of a controversial one. The War Chief is a Time Lord who appears in the War Games. We talked about him very briefly in the Complete History of the Doctor video, but it's been speculated by fans, some fans, that he is an incarnation of the Master. However, there is absolutely no evidence towards this. There's several incarnations obviously between Hughes and Delgado, so I don't mind having a bit of fun and sticking it in headcanon if you want to, but it's, you know, it's totally personal to you. I don't mind. Maybe when I actually watch the War Games, I'll be able to put it in a nice place. But yeah, no, I think for this one it's totally up to you. A lot of fans like it, a lot of fans don't like it, so it's just totally up to audience interpretation. The Jonathan Pryce Master. In The Curse of Fatal Death, there's an incarnation of the Master. Now, as previously mentioned in the Doctor video, people believe this to be canon due to the canonisation of pre-Hartnell Doctors. However, given that the Master is included, if the Jonathan Pryce incarnation is canon, it would have to come in the future, be after Whittaker's Doctor, so probably one of the many post-Sim incarnations. That's if it's even ever going to be canon, which it probably won't. And finally, Derek Jacobi, specifically the Derek Jacobi incarnation from Scream of the Shalka. Similar to that of the Shalka Doctor, it could take place in the right universe, in our universe, but it would have to be again one of the post-John Sim incarnations. in that regeneration cycle as far as we know. And that actually is that. Not as overly complex as the Doctor video, but there are so many inconsistencies that it has to just make up our own sort of fun little theories. Obviously with Sacha Dhawan and Michelle Gomez you can make up your own interpretations. I'm not saying this is definitive, but this is how I see it, and I feel like it's kind of an easy and understandable way. Yes, Missy has the redemption arc, but I don't think it craps on the redemption arc to have Sacha Dhawan find about the timeless child. Finding that out about the Doctor and all that sort of thing and thinking they could be equals is totally blown out the water. They can't be the same, they can't be equals, they can't stand with each other. So you could interpret it that way. Sacha Dhawan could be before, he could be after Missy. This is just how I interpret it. I'm hoping the question gets answered in a few years' time in Doctor Who, but it might not, and until then you can just make up your own theories, so that's what I'm doing. But there we go, the complete history of the Master, as much as I can possibly handle anyway. Obviously, if you haven't already checked out the previous one on the Doctor, that would be greatly appreciated if you have a look at that, because it's very similar style to this, but it was also a massive video project that does take a hell of a long time to do, so I really do appreciate all the support that you could possibly give. If you aren't already, please do subscribe, it's a massive amount of help, especially if you put notifications on, because YouTube is of course a mess. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and comment below for any more suggestions in the future. And if you want to support the channel that extra little bit, you can check out my Patreon page where for $1 a month, you get early access content, your name in all of my descriptions, and access to a Patreon only Discord server where you can talk to other Doctor Who fans, talk to myself, share your content, share your stuff, whatever you want to do, but that's a little like Patreon exclusive now, which is now available. That's great. But yes, of course, Patreon is optional, but if you are interested and do want to potentially help out the channel, myself, all that sort of stuff, that's greatly appreciated. I've also got Twitter and Instagram, so if you want to keep up to date with the latest news on videos and all that sort of thing, that's the place to be. I might make another one of these complete history videos down the line, but I think for now, I'm thinking about taking a little bit of a break, and by that I mean probably a couple weeks break in terms of making these big, enormous projects. But, you know, we'll see. I know a lot of other people are doing these types of videos as well, so, you know, as long as I can keep putting my own spin on it and keep making it refreshing and different and interesting for you guys, then I'm more than happy to keep making them. So, yeah. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it, and yeah, I don't know what else to say really. Thanks for sticking around for so long, and yeah, see you soon. Bye bye.